Hello, friends. I wish to address the issue of abortion. On one of the posts, this one fellow tried to use the religious angle against abortion as to somehow say we should vote for a very despicable individual. I posted back asking if he was aware that not only does the Bible not condemn abortion, it seems to have no problem with it. And he wanted to know where the Bible said this. Now, keep in mind that abortion is nothing new. It's been around for 5,000 years. It was present everywhere, in Egypt, in the countries around Israel, and in Israel, Greece, everywhere. It was present during the writing of the Old and New Testament. Yet, my friends, there's not one passage in this book condemning abortion. You say I'm wrong? Prove it. Find it. There's none in there. Now, however, there is a passage that addresses a forced abortion when the woman did not want it to happen. Now, here, let me read this for you. I'm going to use the Living Bible because it phrases it a little easier to understand. But the New American Standard, the one I usually use, is also pretty clear. You want to turn to Exodus chapter 21, verses 22 through 25. It reads as this: If two men are fighting, and in the process hurt a pregnant woman so that she has a miscarriage, but she lives, then the man who injured her shall be fined whatever the woman's husband shall demand, and what the judge approves. But if any harm comes to the woman and she dies, he shall be executed. If her eye is injured his. If her tooth is knocked out his out. And so on. Hand for hand, foot for foot, burn for burn, wound for wound, and lash for lash. Now here's my question for you. If that fetus was in fact a baby, a human being with a living soul, why wasn't the death penalty applied to the man who had just caused that miscarriage? The answer is very simple. The ancient Hebrews, like Jews today, do not believe that there's a soul in that baby during the pregnancy. They believe that that living soul, that living spirit, is imparted to that baby when it takes its first breath. And if you read the creation story about how God created Adam from the dust and his body was fully formed, yet he was not alive, not until God breathed into him a living soul. So this is where that belief came from. That's why there was no penalty, because what's the penalty in the Bible for murder? It's the death penalty. But yet, causing the miscarriage did not cause that man's life to be required of him, because the soul had not yet entered the body. Now, you could argue whether they were right or wrong, but in doing so, you're contradicting what the Bible seems to imply. Now, here's the real problem, too. You could say, well, those people were wrong, and that's your right to have that opinion. However, nowhere in this book is there any word condemning the practice of aborting unwanted pregnancies. Now, I got to tell you the truth. I've been a Christian since I was 15 years old, and I'm 67 now. And I went to college to become a minister. I preached many, many sermons. So I've been around the field of religion for a while. And I used to be, when I first became a Christian, I was very anti-abortion. And I'm not pro-abortion, let me tell you. I'm pro-choice. But I was opposed to it till I read this passage. And in this passage, it made it very clear. You see, if you're a good Christian, a real Christian, born-again Christian, and you have a belief that's contradicted by the Bible, you alter your belief to fit the Bible. You don't try to alter the Bible to fit your belief. However, when I introduced this passage to the pro-choice people back in the 1980s, early 90s, late 80s, and this so agitated people like, I think, John MacArthur, that they bought controlling interest in the New American Standard because they knew that was the Bible that I was quoting it from. And they said, let's put out a new edition of the New American Standard Bible, and let's use the guides that we are trying to simplify it. Of course, they only simplified this one passage. And they said, okay, what is a definition of a miscarriage? And they said, well, a miscarriage is a premature birth before the fetus can survive outside of the womb. They said, oh, great, just simplify that down to premature. And so they took out the word miscarriage and inserted the word premature, changing the meaning. Now, keep in mind, those first 5 books of the Bible written by Moses carried a curse on anyone who would do such a thing. They were more concerned with their political belief than in their religious belief in what God had said. Clearly, they don't value the word of God as they say they do, because they wanted to alter it. Now, it's easy to be offended when you see, hey, this doesn't jive with what I want to believe. But sometimes you have to alter it. Now, let me be perfectly clear here. Most abortions today could be avoided, because unlike in the ancient times where there's very little birth control available, today we have a whole slew of things. And a man can at least put a condom on to prevent it. And how many men protest against using even a little birth control as using a condom? We can be responsible. And that's the whole thing. There's a lack of responsibility, starting from the man and the woman who could use protection or just delay having sex. A lack of responsibility from the parents, having really spent time discussing it with the children as they're growing up as to why you should wait. Because when you wait in the dating process, you get to know the person a little bit better, and a bond begins to develop. But now that you're getting close to each other, you begin to see there's differences. Let's say, for example, the fellow he's a sports nut. I mean, Saturday, it's football or whatever other sports on, and all day long, all day Sunday, Monday evening, that's his thing. The woman hates all sports. Do you see where there's going to be a problem, a conflict there? Well, as they're dating and they realize that difference, that they begin to not coming together, start to get apart, and the bond doesn't develop, and they break up and they end up with someone who they do have the likes, and they are more similar, and a bond develops, and they begin to see they are a good match, and a good bond begins to develop. However, when you jump into bed, the brain produces not only endorphins, but the hormone oxytocin, which causes a feeling of being in love and a feeling of a bonding to that person. However, that bonding is like Elmer's glue compared to super glue. Super glue is when you naturally have that bond, you really get to know each other, you really fall in love, and it's really hard to separate. Well, you ever use Elmer's glue, it can come apart pretty easy. And so that's why waiting for so you have a successful marriage. Now, like I said, the parents, the couple, the society around them, as far as education, giving good good sex education, and explaining that to the young ladies, you don't have to jump in bed to have the dates. And if you have to jump into the back seat for the guy to take you out again, that's all he's interested in, and it's not worthwhile. Find a guy who wants to be with you, not a guy who wants to use you. Now, the problem also goes to the media, because the media puts out the false information, the false propaganda, that if you're not having sex by the third date, there's something wrong with you. No, there's something wrong if all you want is sex. I know, guys, we like sex. The testosterone, it drives us nuts wanting it. Most of the things about getting old I don't like, but that type of madness of where you see a good-looking girl and you want her so bad, I'm so glad that's gone. Everything else fires up just fine, but the overwhelming desire where you want sex so much that the only time you don't want it is maybe a half hour after having it, because that almost like a drug addict needing that fix. But that was the programming to get us to reproduce. But it's better to have a successful marriage to wait. Now, that's where the education comes in. And there's also a fault, a lack of responsibility by the church. For the church should be preaching the gospel of Christ, not getting into politics, whether the politics is from the Democratic or the Republican side. No church should be having a service, a religious service, where the preacher is saying, vote for this person or vote for that person. It should only be the gospel. But many churches do, unfortunately, preach a false gospel and get into politics. If they're preaching the gospel of Christ, youth get on fire for Jesus. And if they are on fire for the Lord, they usually delay having sex until that bond has really been formed. And then they usually have a successful marriage. But because they're not being given anything else, sex seems like the only thing. And so it's like being hooked on a powerful drug, trying to say, no, I'll go through the withdrawal, I won't do it. Very difficult. So the church needs to be preaching the right message. So it's all of our society not being responsible that's led to the need for abortions. And if we're all doing the right thing, guys, at least putting a condom on or not pressuring her. Now, let me tell you, like I said, I'm 67, and I've been on many dates with many different women. You know what? I've never had a woman pressure me to be the one to give it out. However, it's usually the guys. And, there was a time when I wasn't walking just right with the Lord, and yes, I wanted sex a lot. But I never had the girl pressure me. Put it out or get out. Never. But guys do that to girls all the time. Guys, it's time to be responsible and realize, yeah, it means denying yourself what you want, to realize you may get something better by waiting. Because when you wait, you get a good bond and a good marriage, a marriage that will last. But let me say, the Bible's clear. Abortion is not murder. And because a fetus is not a baby, the living soul has not been imparted yet. So let's knock off the nonsense. Anyway, that's my whole gist. I hope I helped someone. If not, sorry. Have a great day.